Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Yes, sir. I don't know what to do. I can't teach this without the people that I haven't told them. I just pay for it all. And I can't teach 3 lessons in 2 minutes. Without yesterday's class, this class will not make any sense to you. I mean, it was just literally, this is going to be a cute beat. Okay, I think that's the best I can do. And what I'm going to do is I already compressed 4 hours of teaching yesterday into 2. So I'm going to run minutes, which isn't enough, but it's something. Okay. For those of you who have the book, so I'm going to pull up another PowerPoint here than I had planned. For those of you who did listen yesterday, you'll get a very quick review. And this is your cheat sheet here. Okay, so it's January 4th, 2023 in Auckland, New Zealand. By Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Puchani Nivase Susunyavan Nastapyado Satanam. Monday Ham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Salpati Vishchaki Pasundavyacha Patitanam Bhavanavya Vaishnavam. How many of you were at the meeting? Okay, good. So I'm not going to give any intro at all. So I gave my full. Plus, we talked about the 6 ways of being rich. And now we're going to look at the 4 fields. So my request to all of you is that with the 6 ways of rich, we did use the Sanskrit terms. Here we're not going to. And you all know the Sanskrit words that you know for at least a week. So my co-author, Dr. Ruchira Datta, also known as Urmila Devi Dasi, not the famous Rukmini, wife of Anutama. Dr. Datta has a PhD in mathematics. So she and I realized that we really need a fresh start to look at these concepts. And once you can bring back in the Sanskrit terms, and you'll see them hopefully more accurately. Okay? All right. So here we're looking at identifying our prosperity type and career field under principle 1. Why 4? Why take hundreds of thousands of careers and divide them into 4 fields, and why these 4? Now, one reason is that they're stable in human society. These 4 fields. So Rukmini and I came up with these terms: artistry, resources, ideas, and government. And they're not perfect. People think, well, why did you call it this? It took us a long time to think of, very close to conveying the idea that's given in the Shastra. Now, the main reason that there are these 4 fields, the karma of each field is different. And they're mutually exclusive. Now, you might be in one field that's particularly assisting another. So here we're looking at two lessons combined. We're looking at the nature of the fields. We're going to look at container. What's the field about? And then we're going to be looking at what's the nature of the people in the fields, which has to do with principle 2. So what are the fields and what's the nature of the people that go in the fields? Is that a second or third language? Are you managing?
Yes.
Okay. And I think the Kiwi accent is close enough. Yes. So it's not a huge, not like the British. Look at both inclination, which will be that little square on the top, and expertise in each field. The Shastra only talks about expertise. We're going to look at inclination. Okay, first, the field of artistry. Without the work that's done in this field, life would be unsalted rice. Without butter, without cashews, without cumin. Just plain white rice. There'd be no pleasure. So somebody who was there yesterday, tell me some careers from this field. Painter. House painters, yes. Fine arts painters, most. Any others? The Lord, as mentioned in Bhagavatam 2:10-25. And in the subtle body of the universe, there are the Muladhara and the Swadhi. This is a field of service. People inclined for this field who don't yet have dharmic expertise, they like to make things and serve people. I made that, I fixed that, I cleaned that, I did that, and I did it for someone else. I painted a picture that goes in someone else's house. I fixed the plumbing for someone else's house. Now, a lot of us have relaxation that looks like careers in the field of artistry, pleasures of society. So when we want to have recreation and enjoyment, we often tend to do things that are like the field of artistry. Maybe we want to putter around in the garden or do some embroidery or finish some furniture. But that's different than wanting to do that as your livelihood in service of other people. Can you see the distinction? Yep. Dharmic expertise of those in this field. Okay, so this is a field of honesty. Like you hire a plumber, the plumber tells you this is how much I paid for the pipe. They even give you the receipt. Right? You go to a business, it's not like I charge you $200, they paid $100 and they don't tell you. When you hire a plumber, he says I paid $100 and he shows you the receipt. It represents their work honestly. Of satisfaction. This is a field of, yes, thank you. This is a field of satisfaction. The dharmic expertise of those in this field is that they're not, you don't want it too high up. You want it like so. This arm is down and the mic is, yeah, otherwise I can't see my screen. So the people in this field are not ambitious kind of people. They're not really interested in profit. What brings them satisfaction is that they're serving others, the pleasure of those they serve, the skilled wage for their craft or their service, and if they have a nice place to live and put them under pressure, make more money, do it faster. They say, no, I'm not going to sacrifice the quality and integrity of my work just to make things faster or more profitable. And the main questions they ask about their work, because they have this kind of satisfaction, because they don't have ambition. They're satisfied. Okay, field of government. So the field protecting people from internal and external threats. You have to have some rule of law. You have to have some distribution of resources. Who's going to build the roads, the schools, the hospitals, and so forth. So that's done by government, create of the four fields. Like, is this a table or not? It's a very concrete thing. Is it a good government or not? Oh, that's really abstract, isn't it? I bet you everyone in this room would have a little different opinion about what is a good government, but we would all agree as to whether or not this is a table. Right? So it's definitely more abstract. So maintenance of law and order, justice, morals, ethics. Now, the field of government does not apply just to political governments. In the Shastra, This field applied to political governments, like it's like your apartment building is a little kingdom. You know, when you would be collecting either taxes and fines and fees, or you'd be collecting rent. In our modern day, this field, you know, the United Nations, Interpol, but also sometimes to organizations that collect funds through charity, which was not done in ancient times, and do government type work. So if you have organizations that are providing people an education and doing the kind of work that government normally does, they're in this field. This field provides the leadership for society, but there are leaders in all four fields. All four fields have leaders in that field, but the field of government provides the leadership for the whole society. Does this make sense? No? Everybody. So just because you're a leader doesn't mean you're in the field of government. You can be a leader in resources, in ideas, or in artistry. But if you're a leader for the society, that's so government is the arms of the universal form, but also at its heart. Because arms are not just used for weapons, you know, like we use the word arms to mean weapons. Are you armed? Right? Arms dealer doesn't mean arms. But arms are not just used for weapons, arms are also used for care. And so on the subtle universal body, this is the Anahata chakra. These people are like the big directly, but artistry is serving as an assistant. You could say it's like Dasyabha, and government is serving more like a parent, like Vatsayabha. So it's a very different kind of mood. In government, although they're serving people, they're not trying to please clients and customers like people do in artistry. And government is a very expansive field. People want to serve, take care of more people in better ways. At all parts of the military, but not like the chefs. What else? Police officers, firefighters. Now, firefighters really epitomize the mood of this field. Lawyers, diplomats, politicians, all different, you know, from your mayors to your governors, to your prime ministers, people in the legislature. Now, not the clerk who's in the clerk in the court is an artistry, but the judges now. Okay, and people tend to criticize the people in this field as being power hungry or controllers. But actually, their job is to control society. Their job is to lead society. Let's look at the temperament of the people in this field. So those who are inclined to this field but don't yet have the dharmic expertise, they often like to play that they're heroes. They often like to protect other people. They may argue or fight easily, especially over principles, not so affected by criticism. They may have a take charge mentality. They tend to be very goal-oriented, very systems thinkers. They may be aware of the flows of human society. Those with the various flows of human society, where there are needs, how people are moving, how people need to be protected. And that may be true if they can understand this person looks like they might be ready to steal something, field as heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, that's very important, and leadership. Also great steadiness, tolerance, and determination. Field, they try to avoid a crisis. They try to keep peace. They try to keep crises from happening. But when they happen, they feel energized by them. Are people who run towards danger. There's a building on fire, they run into the fire, everyone else runs in. There's someone shooting in a bank, they go, they often tend to have some charismatic leadership. Even just to police. And again, their general nature is to be tolerant, according to Shastra, to be tolerant and generous. They collect resources and resources for emergency, and when there is an emergency, they'll get out everything. Important, and are very learned, very intelligent, but their study tends to be very practical and very related to their field. They tend to want to study about history and politics and martial arts and ethics and justice. Those with don't only protect the human beings in their domain, but also the land and the animals, particularly the non-agricultural land and animals. and with expertise in the field of government, they will sacrifice everything for the sake of justice and interest. And the main questions they ask about their work are, is it just and is it honorable? Okay, going on to the field of resources. This is the only field, but these are the only ones who actually create them. So it's from this field that we get all the raw materials for our food, our construction, clothing, medicines, everything. Where you're going to get the metal and the wood and the cotton and the carrots, and that's all going to be coming from this field. And this field is the only field that provides this for human society. Now, this field is more concrete than government and less concrete than artistry. So it's, do you run it with a lot of more detached? And those answers vary considerably from one culture to another. You just move from Sweden to Germany, you're going to get a different answer about what is a good business. These people give the bulk of the charity in human society. They're the main patrons of the arts. They pay the bulk of the taxes, and they're the main employers. So people in artistry may employ others, people in government ideas employ others. The main employers are in resources. In the universal body, they're the stomach, and Prabhupada often compares this. He'll say you have to water the root of the tree, and he'll say you have to put the food in the stomach. So this field represents the stomach in the universal body and the Manipur chakra. This is a field of expansion. This is a field of expansion. These have to be people that are not just satisfied with having their own comfortable life, because they have to provide all of the wealth for the rest of society. Okay, some careers in the field of resources. All business people, entrepreneurs, what else? Farmers, not the people who just pick the apples. What else?
Banks.
Bankers, not the tellers.
CEOs. CEOs.
CEOs of businesses, yes. Stockbrokers. Buying and selling houses. Yeah, like sales, yeah, if you're building the houses. And if you're growing trees and farming the lumber, producing you're getting the bricks from the soil. Yes. And the criticisms people have about this field is generally they think these people are greedy. They don't understand that in order for these people to feed all of human society, they have to have an expansive mentality. And that expansive mentality is sometimes misunderstood. Okay, the nature of the people in this field. Okay, here we're going to inclination. People who like to play with money, people who like, you see some children, they'll start a little business. Right, they're very business minded, or they really like to play with natural resources. And having this mood of expansion. The Bhagavatam says that the people who belong in this field are always thirsty. Not for water. Okay? They're also systems thinkers. But they're looking at the systems of their particular business or their particular resource. Right? If they're cotton farmers, they're looking at, okay, what kind of cotton are people buying? Where is it being shipped from? What are the latest fashions demanding? What are the different breeds of cotton that I can buy? How is the seasons changing? How is the climate changing? So they're looking at the whole system. First, although they may be risk takers, they're not your running into danger people in your society. Does that make sense? And therefore, they're able, they understand how things flow, and they can take advantage of various situations to be successful. And they know that they have to save the seeds from the harvest to plant next. There's times of difficulty, they give everything away. What would happen if people and resources did that? What would happen if people and resources in a time of difficulty gave everything? Now, those with dharmic expertise in the field of resources are willing to sacrifice to maintain this flow of resources in society in a highly ethical way. And the main questions they ask about their work, sustainable and is it regenerative, which does not apply simply to the environment. It applies to the business itself. To be sustainable and regenerative, you have to keep making a profit, that you have to be able to respond to various trends within society. Do you follow? Yes? So is it sustainable? Is it regenerative? Okay, going on to the field of ideas. The field of ideas provides all the wisdom and guidance for human society. Now, those who are intellectuals are probably in the field of ideas, but not everyone in the field of ideas is an intellectual. Like if it rains, there has to be clouds, but there can be clouds without rain. So if you're an intellectual, you're probably in the field of ideas. But if you're in the field of ideas, you may not be an intellectual. And there are intelligent people in all four fields. There are highly intelligent, highly educated engineers in the field of artistry. There are highly intelligent and highly educated people in the field of government. So lawyers or judges, there are highly intelligent, educated people in the field of resources, correct? So it's not that all the intelligent people are in the field of ideas, but pretty much all the intellectuals are in the field of ideas. Does that make sense? That do not involve being an intellectual. Now, generally in the field of ideas, people communicate through language, sometimes through the fine arts. So some very small percentage in ideas and not artistry. It's a small percentage, but there are some. The point is whether they're trying to produce pleasure for society or truth. Now, they might be trying to produce truth and they're using some beauty of the world to do it. Like I hope I made a beautiful PowerPoint, but I'm not making this PowerPoint in order to produce pleasure in you. Do you follow? I mean, I hope you find some pleasure by looking at it, but that's not my primary aim. My primary aim is to communicate truth. Whereas somebody might make a PowerPoint of all just nature scenes and relaxing water sounds. And can you get that distinction? You know, so the musicians were just going, "Oh, my baby left me, I'm so sad." That's artistry. Secondary, that is ideas. This is the head of the universal body and the Visuddha chakra and the Agya, field of ideas. Yes, almost all teachers, but most teachers of most things. Philosophers and scientists. Some people also may have another job and they do a little bit of teaching. Do you follow? Just like Arjuna, it said, taught Satyaki. If you're a war correspondent in the Ukraine, then you're in ideas. Okay. Anything else? The government. This field of work in this field is useless. They don't see a lot of practical value to a lot of this work. You know, like, why are you studying the Sanskrit poetry of Kavi Kanipur? You know, why don't you get out? Or why are you studying, you know, the eating habits of some endangered bear in northern Kenya? So a lot of the work in this field is useless by most of society. And also the people in this field find truth. People who see the patterns in ideas, relationships, and systems, people who like to teach, people who like to research, people who like to study, can also be people who particularly like to be introspective and do a lot of meditation and worship, because priests are also in this field. Okay, the dharmic expertise. So Bhagavad Gita says peacefulness, self-control, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom. Bhagavatam says these are both fields of satisfaction. They're not fields of ambition. But remember, in artistry, people are satisfied if their client or customer is pleased, if they're treated with dignity and respect, fairly compensated for life, creature comforts. Yes, people and ideas are satisfied if they have a very vibrant mental and intellectual life. And often they're not as straightforwardness. So both the field of artistry and sources in government, you have diplomacy. There's one 18th chapter purport where Prabhupada talks about how lying is compulsory in this field, and you have to be diplomatic in government. But the honesty in ideas is straightforwardness. It's not trying to please a customer or client. Like doctors, other than surgeons or dentists and plumbers. But doctors are in the field of ideas, and they may tell you, hey, you have cancer, and tell you something, whether or not it's going to be pleasing. And mercy is another quality of the dharmic expertise of this field. So the people with dharmic expertise may be dedicated to us emotionally. They may be dedicated to understanding themselves, helping people physically. They like to collect knowledge, understand it, analyze it, take it apart, teach it. Sometimes they just live in their head, know what's going on in the room. They may do a lot of writing and speaking. Some of these people study very tiny things, like, what do the endangered bears in the Yukon eat? And some of them are studying big systems. But in government and resources, they understand systems to control them. In ideas, they want to understand systems to understand them. This kind of unsentimental aspect comes from people, and they feel like they're sports commentators that are watching the game but not playing. And again, they're satisfied with it. Also like artistry, but a very different kind of satisfaction. And those with dharmic expertise in this, and the questions that they have about their work are, is it true and is it wise? Okay, that was my 4 hours and 30 minutes. Does anyone have any real confusion about that I should settle before then? Anybody? Anything? Yes?
This one question, like,
Yes, if there's an emergency.
but we don't see that nowadays. Powerful people tend to keep their, they don't want to give away. And the same field of resources, they may just they want to make money to give away to others.
They want to make society prosperous.
But powerful people in the resources, they want to just make more money for themselves and their family.
So if these four fields always exist, and the people with the tendencies in these four fields always exist, why does Srila Prabhupada want us to teach Varnashram Dharma? Because people are either in the wrong. So like one of my grandsons plays the saxophone. And when you all know what a saxophone is? So when I was visiting, he was just starting to learn. Okay, you with me? Can you imagine somebody just starting to learn to play the saxophone? Do you think it was pleasant? It was extremely Go in your room and close the door. And if you have some earplugs, you can probably get them out. So he had an inclination for playing the saxophone, but he had to be trained how to play it properly. Otherwise, all it produced was a bunch of noise. So human beings have natural inclinations for these four fields. If you're not trained in the dharma of your field, you may just make a lot of noise. Modern society can train people in the information of their field, the information needed to do your work, in the skills needed to do your work, but modern society does not know how to train people in the dharma. Even in modern society where they teach ethics, they tend to teach ethics as a monolithic thing, that as if everyone's following the same system of ethics. But the Shastra teaches us that there's four distinct systems of ethics. So we have two main problems in our modern society. One is that people are in the right field, but they don't know the dharma. And we'll look at that a lot more on Saturday. On Saturday, we're going to discuss the whole book. Obviously, in 2 hours, we're just touching on things, but we're going to look at all the ways of being dharmic in your field. And what we're just about to look at is, what if you're in the wrong field? So some of the corruption that you're seeing in modern society is that a person's doing work in resources, but they have the mentality of ideas. They're doing work in government, but they have the mentality of artistry. And when you bring your dharmic inclinations into the wrong place, If you go into a field of satisfaction with an expansive mentality, or you go into a field of expansion with a satisfaction mentality, if you go into a field of honesty with a diplomatic mentality, can you understand mentality? If you go into a field where you have to be unsentimental and you have a let's serve people directly mentality, you're going to be constantly, because people are in the wrong place. You will cause havoc and adharma if you're in the wrong place. If you're in the right place, then you still have to be a good person and fall in love with Krishna. You follow? Just being in the right place isn't enough. Like, where are the homeowners here? They're there? Oh, there you are. So this is your home, right? It's your place, right? And see how neat and beautiful you keep it. But some people, they're in their home and it's a mess, yeah? It's their home, they're in their home, but they're throwing trash everywhere. I'm sure some of you have seen. So it's possible to be in your place and be making a mess. And that's why why does there have to be any? Does that make sense? Dharmic expertise. What you will see is inclination in you. What you may not see is the dharmic expertise. And if you can feel what the world would be like, we have a chapter on sustainable prosperity, and we have a chapter called Vision for a Whole Society. You know, what would the world actually look like if this was put into effect? Okay? Saturday, when we go through the whole thing. Then what we're going to look at right now are what happens when we cross into the wrong field. Start this. Yes.
You were saying that you can't be
Been satisfied. How can you be both detached and into providing everybody with the pleasures of life? It just doesn't work. You can be in government assisting ourselves. Like, let's say you work in the Ministry of Labor. So you're working in government, but you're assisting artistry. That's something that's, or let's say you're a professor in a law school. So you're in ideas, but you're really assisting government. Or you're a secretary in a medical office. So you're in artistry and you're assisting ideas. And so, you know, if you're a clerk in a court, you may love the law, but you're not doing government work, you're doing artistry work. You're not the one fighting for justice and morals and ethics and protection, but you're helping those who do that because it's very dear to you. So that may appear that we're in two fields. So there are many, many people who are in one field, but they particularly are interested in helping another. Does that make sense?
It's not true for some people to say that I'm telling you we're all mixed up.
We are definitely all mixed up, but not like that. We're very confused. I mean, the Shastra sometimes talks about mixtures, but by birth. Because in former times, generally people married who were of the same nature. It was like super important. I mean, that's degraded now to I have to marry somebody who's in the same caste by birth, which means nothing anymore. And then they had these yajnas they could do to get children of the same nature. We don't know how to do that. You know, you follow? We don't have any priest you can go to and say, you know, I want to get a musician child. And they'll say the right mantras and they'll give you some sweet rice and, you know, you just don't have that. So, yeah, we're very mixed. You know, husband and wife are different. And if you have 5 kids, they may be all over the place. And often today, I mean, a lot of the people that I do consultation with on this, they're 35, 40, 45 years old. And they're like, I don't know what I am. So yes, people are very mixed up, but not. If you were mixed up in terms of mixing fields, you wouldn't be able to move. You'd be in constant conflict with yourself. I mean, you were going to feel in conflict with yourself if you're working in the wrong field, because your values will be constantly being violated by the work that you have to do. but you're not, that your values are fighting yourselves. Am I making sense? Yeah? Just like I'm super straightforward, and if you know me, right? I can be diplomatic for a very short period of time, right? And not very well. It's not very convincing. I was in one place where the person who served us lunch was not the cook. Okay. So then later the evening program, the actual cook came up to me. So Urmila, how did you like the lunch? And I said, the subject was amazing. See, I'm just not very good at it, you know? And then she says, well, what about the salad? And I'm like, oh no. We do. So, well, no. Well, the lettuce was rotten. And she was crying for if I have to do something that requires diplomacy, I ask my grandson-in-law, who's in the field of government, I say, hey, Sri Arjuna, is that clear? No? Okay. Any other general question? Visual level to help people understand, help people gain wisdom and gain truth for the sake of truth and wisdom, or if it's in the other fields. You can be a business consultant that helps people to make more money. They're making sure that like abused children get taken care of and people get their welfare money and people get proper housing and that kind of. They may do some counseling, but their primary job is now then that would be in the field. Any other general things? Look at our second big area, which is finding satisfaction and purpose, but our work needs to be ethical and meaningful work. So here we're going to look at a verse that Krishna gives twice in the Bhagavad Gita. He gives it here. The first two lines are the same. Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradama Swayustita. You see that? Yeah. And one of the times he repeats this is in the summary. You know, a teacher who repeats something and it's there in the summary, it's important. And Krishna is saying here, don't go on someone else's path. Even if you can do it expertly. Expert in what? What are the three parts of any work? The skills, knowledge or information, and so you may be able to do the work of another field expertly in terms of the knowledge that's required. And you may be able to do it expertly in terms of the skills that are required. Don't pretend to be something new. It's exhausting, isn't it? It's completely exhausting. I mean, even actors can't do it. If you can think of any time we're being ungenuine, you know, you're at some event that you don't want to be at. Oh, it's so happy to be here. So nice to see you. It doesn't. Krishna uses an unusual word, biography. If you do someone else's work, your work becomes a vehicle of fear. Like if you're trying to drive your car in the water or your bicycle in the sky, your very work becomes a vehicle of fear. Let's look first about how this affects us as individuals, our swadharma, and others' work, paradharma. When we're doing our own work, when we're doing work that's in our field, that's about, you know, sometimes you're going on and then you stop and like, oh my God, I'm tired. But while you're doing it, you're feeling energized. When we do other people's work, we feel depleted. We may feel irritated. When we're doing our own work, our mind is our work, our mind is our enemy. And my theory on this is that I may think, God, this is all useless. Why am I doing this stuff? Why am I doing something practical? If I'm not naturally in government, I'm doing government work, I may be thinking, where are the leaders? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they being treated? Why aren't they taking care of things? What's wrong with the leaders? If I'm not naturally in resources and I'm doing that work, I'm going to think, oh, why am I being greedy? Why am I caring about money? Why am I caring about profit? I don't even do this in Europe. She says, I've started a business to make money, but I hate it. She says, I hate making money. I feel guilty every time I make money. So, are you gonna have a successful business then? If you're not naturally in artistry and you're working, but nobody even cares, nobody even appreciates. Does anyone even notice what you do? Why am I doing it? But when we're doing our own work, that kind of thing doesn't happen. When we're doing our own work, we're naturally detached from the fruits of action. And really think about this. Took me a while to figure out, oh, maybe those two things go together. Action and fruits. Why? Because our own work is an expression of ourselves. Now, after we publish the book, it always works like this, right? After we printed it, published it, it's natural, that's not a desire. Is that if you want something that's natural, that is desirelessness. You don't say, what's wrong with you? I'm just easily be detached from the fruits and offer all the fruits to Krishna. When I'm doing someone else's work, that's not operating. I'm not getting that satisfaction from the work itself, and therefore, as a substitute, I become attached to the fruits. I become very affected by the externals, by the ups and downs, and it's very difficult to dedicate a lot more. From a spiritual perspective, we are greatly aided in our bhakti if we are doing our own work. Now, bhakti is independent. You can still fall in love with Krishna. No. Whatever. But it's so much easier when we're in the right place. Could we have this class in the middle of the highway? Well, sure. It would be a little difficult to concentrate. Yeah, that's right. Just like these devotees here, I've heard they purpose-built this building to facilitate this kind of. That's what being in our right place is like. It's like something that's purpose-built for our ability to practice bhakti. Now, of course, somebody might say, well, I don't care if I hurt myself. I'll sacrifice myself. By the way, what are austerities that harm ourselves? They're in Tamagun, aren't they? And who do they give pain to? The super soul. Austerities that harm ourselves give pain to the super soul and are in Tamagun. I'm going to do the austerity of doing someone else's work. But even if we think like that, okay, well, I'm going to sacrifice myself for the greater good. When we do someone else's work, it's unethical. We are creating havoc in society. As one devotee just recently told me, I think it was in Malaysia, he was saying, when we do someone else's work, we neither get the benefit of our own dharma, nor do we get the benefit of the other. All right, so in our book, we have in 6. In chapter 5, we look at general reasons for not doing other people's work. And then in chapter 6, we look at very specific, what we call field crossings. And we look at every possible way that someone could do someone else's work. So I'm going to go through that now. In the book, we give a lot more examples. We give, for each of these in the book, we give a lot of specific historical examples, and we go into a lot more harms than I'm going to be covering here. Okay, crossing government and resources. Government and resources. They're both expensive. Because that's a very common misconception. It looks like that. It looks like that. He was in his 20s. He said, Mata, by the time I was in like 20, 21 years old, I had generated more about his kids. He says, you know you've raised your kids properly when they give more wealth to society than you invested in their upbringing. Someone who has the dharma of resources is not selfish. They look selfish. Why are they profit-minded? Can you have sustainable, regenerative wealth without profit. Are you with me? If your business closes, your employees are out of a job, and your customers no longer get what they need. Prosperity of society. The people they serve as their employees, and the people that they serve, that they're getting their resources to. And remember that the people and resources, they're the main employers of society. They're the biggest taxpayers and the biggest charity givers. They feed society, and God himself appears in this field. The people in this field deeply care about society, but it is an unsentimental field, and they don't appear to be serving people directly. So that's a big difference. In government, they appear to be serving people directly. If someone comes into the business and says, you know, my kid is starving, can you give me a discount? If they do that every time somebody says that, they're going to bankrupt the business, and then they're not going to be able to give any food to anybody. If you're starving, you go to the government, and the government takes care of you. Follow? Yes? Now, a business person may do that through a charity, but if they do it through their business, they're going to bankrupt the business. And then they can't do their
Is it more about if there's a spectrum of how much sustainable you want it to be, because it could also be the fact that it's their profitability, they're actually making lots. It's a spectrum.
well, that's adharmic. That's adharmic. That's adharma. If my profit margins are so high, then I'm hurting my customers.
But that's very common though.
Same answer that I gave already. We're not talking about what is everyone in Kali Yuga doing. Is that clear? We're not saying everyone right now who's working in government is following the dharma of the field of government. Okay? But right now we're looking at, let's just say, we're looking at people who do have the proper dharma of the field, but they're in the wrong place. But with the mentality of resources working in government. They have the mentality, they have the proper mentality of. Now remember, they're both system sinkers, but in government, you look at the, or they may try to profit from government. Do we see this happen? Now, sometimes that happens because people have a government mentality and they're corrupt, but more often it happens. Now, one good example of this is in the United States, we have privately owned prisons. Not all of them, thankfully. Are they going to want to spend money on educating and reforming the prisoners? Where the prison. Okay, what about people in resources? Now, what it looks like superficially is that government favor people over projects and resources favor projects over people. But when government put people over projects, but when government-minded people go into resources, they're going to tend to prioritize taking care of people and not keeping the business sustainable. That's exactly what they do. Think about in the former Soviet Union when the government took over the farms. Having Russian audiences was good for this question. Everybody starved, and they didn't have that motive of bringing wealth to society. The government will take over the farms, and then we'll get rid of all those greedy business people. And everybody's starved. How do government works and resources? They're going to think, well, what's a fair price? They're going to price things in terms of social sustainability. Again, the business fails, employees are out of the job, people no longer get what they need. Let me finish this and then I'll ask at the end. Otherwise, we already have, I want to squeeze it. Okay, government and ideas. They're both systems thinkers, excellent. But one is looking at systems of human society to control them, and one is looking at systems to understand them and
Wisdom and education.
wisdom and education, but look like what's different between idea and
on this?
Well, not everything, because they're both system sinkers. Both system sinkers. Yes, government is serving people directly, and in ideas, you have this unsentimental mood. Government is expansive. Ideas is satisfied. Government is a field of diplomacy. Ideas is a field of straightforwardness. When you have people with the mentality of ideas work in government, remember one of those Dharma calls? Mercy. What happens when you have a person who's too merciful working in the field of government? What's going to happen? People don't get punished. This problem in our Krishna. We most certainly do. Yes? Oh, it's okay. Be merciful. Ideas people are very detached. Government people have to get people enthusiastic to work for their group. Our group, rah, rah, rah. Otherwise, you're not going to pay your taxes. You're not going to do public service. You're not going to sacrifice for the good of your group. That's part of the role of government. And ideas people think that's around my group thing, my group. People with information for the good of the public. And ideas people want to research, and then research some more, and then research some more, and then do some research in 6 months to take care of immediate needs of our members. We're researching and writing papers in any of these 3 fields, work in the field of ideas. They're going to twist knowledge in some way, and they're going to, and they're each going to twist knowledge in a different way. So when people would trust what comes out of ideas, and I don't trust what comes from the scientists and the philosophers, right? Because they pollute a natural desire for some hierarchy. Think about the military. That is not true in the field, which is very hard for people in the other fields to understand. Like when I got my PhD, I went up to the head of my thesis, my dissertation committee, Dr. Fenwick English, who was also the head of the whole College of Education in the university. And I said, thank you so much for all your help, Dr. English. And he said, no, I'm not Dr. English anymore. Fenwick, we're equals. So that's the general mood of the field of ideas. And they stop the natural flow of knowledge. Now here we have the opposite problem, right? When I encourage people in loyalty and patriotism, and when people with the mentality of government work in ideas and loyalty into religion and into philosophy, where it doesn't belong. Crossing ideas and resources. What's similar about these?
Resources is expansive, but
Yes, you have the expansive, satisfied, diplomatic, honesty situation.
And sector, individual ideas. When a person has got idea for anything he would like to do himself, there are limitations and boundaries by which he is governed. When you know I have a good idea, I am bound by the government regulations
Excellent.
and the system which I am supposed to.
Yeah, when people go into ideas, they tend to impose a hierarchy in the field of ideas. When people with the nature have that expansive mentality, they'll grow a backyard garden, but they don't want to do a big agribusiness. And again, people will certainly care. When people with the mentality of resources work in ideas, they will try to make a profit out of knowledge. So government people will politicize knowledge, resources people will try to profitize knowledge. Think about the pharmaceutical industry when they do research about pharmaceutical drugs. Can you trust it? No. And again, it diminishes people's faith in the field of ideas. They think that's terrible for human society. Human society has to trust that what comes out of the field of ideas is objective truth. If government-minded people are working in it, politicizing knowledge, or resource people are working in it, profiteering, something that doesn't mean anything. So please listen very carefully. Just like I'm being diplomatic and making a profit, I'm doing something unethical. It feels wrong. In time, researching and studying about things that are not immediately practical feels unethical to me. How can you justify spending this amount of money ethically? You have a conflicting system of ethics. Is this clear to everybody? Yes? And so they'll tend to neglect it. They'll say, we're not going to do that, so nothing. Crossing ideas and artistry. What is similar?
You satisfied?
They're both fields of satisfaction. Yes. And they're both fields of honesty. Yes. In ideas, their satisfaction has come from intellectual mental life, being treated with dignity. History brings all the pleasures to society, right? And they're a very concrete field. Remember that? They're a very concrete field. You've got the most concrete field doing the most abstract work. They miss it. They can't get the abstractions. They can't get the nuances. They can't get the context. They just don't see it. And I've run into this where someone with the artistry, they'll just say, well, this is the quote, Prabhupada says this here. I said, well, yes, Prabhupada says this here, but then he says this over here. And they're concrete thinkers. You want them to be concrete thinkers. You don't want an abstract table. Okay? It's metaphorically, like they're putting all the spice and the salt into everything. But ideas provides the vision for society. And when people with the mentality of artistry work in ideas, it's as if society has put salt and spices in their eyes. Right? Government will politicize ideas, resources will profitize ideas, artistry will sensualize ideas. And you have the same problem, people will lose faith in the field. They'll be misled, they no longer feel they can trust it. Now, to those with the mentality of artistry, most of ideas work seems completely stupid and useless. To them, it's like doing crossword puzzles. Like, why do we neglect a lot of the work of the field of artistry people and ideas? Artistry people want to please a customer and a client. They don't want to produce objective truth that people are going to be angry about. They're going to hesitate to do that. Which am I doing? People don't like it. And because of an artistry's tendency to please clients and to want simple creature comforts, they're prime candidates for being corrupted if they work in the field of ideas. I'll give you creature comforts and you'll make me happy. Okay, fine. And it's very hard for artistry people to deal with the huge amount of literal and figurative freedom of the field of ideas. People in artistry are maintaining the status quo. They're maintaining the foundation of society. They're maintaining all the functions of society. And ideas, often you have to challenge the status. And artistry people are going to feel very uncomfortable. Why would I want to challenge the very thing that I'm designed to uphold? People with the mentality of ideas working in artistry. This is a problem for both ideas and government people if they work in artistry. They're terrible employees. They don't want to please customers and clients. They'll be insubordinate. They'll be late. Miss deadlines. Conflicted. And I feel I need more freedom. Why am I constantly being tied up here? Sometimes when people with the mentality of ideas work in artistry, they can't relate to the fact that this field is about beauty and pleasure. And they'll dry up the field. Why do you need all these pleasures in society? That's all just illusion, you know. And society will look like that. Now, sometimes it goes the opposite way. Sometimes when ideas people work in artistry, they get pulled into the sensual nature of it. My own personal conviction is this is the main reason why Shastra says, of all the crossings of field, never do this one. People should never work in artistry. We're trying to figure out why. Why is this crossing particularly damaging? And this was all we could come up with. That especially the intellectuals working in artistry, are they getting their mental intellectual stimulation? No. What do you have? An idle mind, devil's motion. If you have intelligentsia, think about this for a minute. You have intelligence, of sensual pleasure. Do we want sensual pleasures in society, my dear friends? No, we don't. We don't want any flowers. You know, a pretty garden, you need some. You can't have too much, too little. But if intellectuals are pulled into the sensual nature of the field of artistry, the example are food scientists who study what makes us criteria so people will overeat. Or you think about the psychologists, psychiatrists who design advertisements to make us buy things we don't need or that are harmful. Okay, let's look at government and artistry. What's similar about these fields? And in artistry, you're serving as an assistant. In government, you're serving as a parent, as a controller. That's quite a different service, isn't it? You're both satisfied. One is diplomatic, one is honest. Artistry-minded people working in government. Here again, you have this abstract, concrete problem. In war, you know, you have a battle plan, but when the battle actually starts, you got to work with what you have. You don't know what's going on. You got to make decisions. And artistry people don't want to do that. They're concrete. They can't function in that kind of an environment. And here we come to the satisfied, expansive. Artistry people want to take care of people, but not big people. That's just politics. And they may neglect it. Also, here again, we have the abstract, concrete problem that artistry people doing government work will bring bureaucracy to government. Now, you need some bureaucrats who work for government as assistants, but you don't want the government itself to be a bureaucracy. You want it to be responsive to individual needs, working on principles. Artistry people working in government. So here we have the fact that government does what? They run where? Into the fire. Artistry people, these are people who are satisfied with a comfortable life in the status quo. They're not run into fire people. We had an incident in the last couple of years in America where there was a shooting in a school and 2 of the police officers didn't go in. Why didn't you go into the building? They were shooting. People with the mentality of government working in artistry. Well, here you have high-risk people. They're energized by doing your electrical wiring. And here we have the same problem as ideas people in artistry. They're just not good at pleasing clients and customers. They're going to be insubordinate. They're going to be late. They're going to be procrastinating in some way. They're going to have a difficult time serving clients and customers. Then government-minded people working in artistry, you know, their mood is justice, morals, ethics, and they want to be controllers so that they can bring justice, morals, and ethics to them. But then they're in the most subordinate position in society. How are they going to exercise them? They often become vigilantes or just agitators. My personal conviction is a lot of the people who cause trouble on social media, both in and out, in both in this time of the general society. Justice, morals, ethics, take down this person, take down that person. They're government people who are working in artistry, and they're frustrated. They just don't, because they want to bring justice and morals and ethics and law and order and fairness and honor to society, and they don't have any way to do it. They're constrained. And so it's going to come out in a new way. Okay. Our last one, crossing resources and artistry. To me, this is the saddest crossing. So what? Well, everybody's providing a service, but it's the resources and ideas people appear not to be. They appear to be unsentimental people who, you know. But both resources and artistry is working with the practical stuff. And the differences? Well, you do some artistry. Employee and employer, not always. You do have artistry people who run their own little thing. You know, you do have potters who have their own little pottery shop. They're not trying to make a profit, but they're not an employee. You follow what I'm saying?
One's expansive and
One's expansive, one's satisfied, one's diplomatic, and one bring this expansiveness into artistry. So they're going to take crafts, make it into a factory, destroy the crafts. Fast foods. Inspiring plots, inspiring characters. But they want to make more money. Let's just throw in a bunch of sex and violence. We'll make more money. And sometimes you have resources, people that push artistry, creators and musician, and they'll damage them. People with the mentality of artistry working in resources. They don't have this expansive mentality. No? So their businesses may engage in a lot of pollution. Or another thing, I read this just recently again, you know, after this published. But I was reading about people praising pounds and free goods to customers in need. But they weren't running the business. You follow? They were an employee. And everyone's saying, oh, how wonderful they are. They're giving free discounted things. And I'm thinking, yeah, they're bankrupting the business. They were stealing from the business. Because they were thinking, let me please the customer. Not let me have a sustainable business. We were planning to go to Nottingham. So I hope that you're all able to see that each type of person is beautiful in their own place. And as soon as they go in another place, then they cause harm. But I hope you got a good idea. So any general comments or discussions? Yes?
That's the most very dangerous, because they might be intellectualized ideas.
They may use, if they're intellectuals, they may use their intellectualism in a sensual way, which is a perversion of their intellectualism.
I was wondering, you know, you said that that was
Can do other things, but not that.
I was just wondering if that was also because they're not supposed to be in anyone's pay. Because I know.
So if you're doing ideas work, we're not talking about if you're doing artistry work. If you're doing person, but you're doing artistry work. So one of the ways in which ideas people need to do what we're going to talk about on Saturday to cherish their field is to make sure that they're never. Well, but that here is fairly useless to society. Most of the work of the field of ideas, society doesn't see as having that much. Therefore, society should be trained to give to those in the field of ideas. So, in general, giving charity to. So we have a little bit of that, and then you also have many cases where the communities also contribute to schools. Now, I mean, how can it be your livelihood if you're not compensated? Regular expenses. You have to be in a situation where those expenses are going to be met. However, Prabhupada talks about in a tropical climate, a teacher would just sit under a tree. You can't even do that in Auckland. What to speak of if you're in Wellington. You're just not going to work with the climate. I mean, if you're in Hawaii, you just gather wild avocados. Before she was a devotee, she lived for a year in Hawaii outside, just eating wild fruit and bathing in the ocean, and she gained weight. But it's not going to work in temperate climates. And then we're in a society we are going to have. But the mentality has to be there that I cannot allow anyone to compromise my objective. I can't be in the position to be able to speak objective truth. Now, how that's going to play out specifically in 2023 will definitely 100 in a tropical climate. It's just like even in the field of government, strictly people in the field of government are never supposed to live on charity. But in our modern situation that are being filled by charitable organizations that are doing the work of government with charity rather than to charity. And they're definitely in the field of government. So, you know, some of those details don't, like Emily Bhakti Maharaj, she said, I mean, even 150 years ago, you could kill someone in a duel and that was legal. You know? Those sort of details. The essence of the thing is that ideas has to give objective, uncompromised truth to society. So you have to have people in that field who have a particular mentality, and then they have to be in a situation to cherish
Darwin's theory. But you're in ideas, you don't.
Okay, so there you're talking about, we discussed this in the book, how, you know, anybody in any field might be in a, we didn't talk about this class. Talked about it in the first class. Which is society. So if 8 and 9 are not put into effect, 8 and 9 depend on society's leaders. Now, it could be done in the microcosm, operative in a mini society. You could form a village or a township where 8 and 9 were operative. But 8 and 9 are not going to be operative in the greater society anytime in the next week. I mean, you can't do everything, why bother doing anything? But I don't think that works in life in general. When you clean your house, do you clean every single thing in your house? And if you're not going to clean every single thing, should you clean nothing? That would be ridiculous. Yes. So individuals can do a lot of 1 to 7, even in a society that isn't doing 8 and 9 at all. And Srila Prabhupada wanted us to create little mini societies that were also doing 8 and 9. And ultimately, he wanted us to influence society in general and change society in general. Yes, that's a big ask he made of us. So there are going to be situations where the people you're working with, they don't understand Dharma, they're not doing Dharma. And then you got to go to...
So it doesn't sound advisable to have multiple jobs. Or
As long as they're in the same field.
they're very different, and a job like any system can be so varied, like financial management, customer management.
But that's still all resources. That's just leadership resources. That's exploring resources is fine. Yes.
How do you precisely know that you're
Thank you. We definitely have our nature, not only due to our past karma and our past nonsense and our past association with the universe, but also because we have a mission. And in fact, those of us who will practice our nature in this life has something to do with Krishna's design also, not just our attachment. Well, that's what this is all about. You know, it's what I'm trying to teach. How do you get to know what your nature is? I mean, at the end of my world tour of teaching us. And a lot of people, I mean, I had the class I'm going to teach on Saturday, which is just I go through all of these in like an hour. I taught this class teaching all 9 principles and understand, oh, this is who I am. Now, I can only cover in these classes a small amount of what's in the book. And we go into far, far more depth on each of these topics, and then we cover a lot more. So I've also had a lot of people tell me, oh, I'm reading the book and now I get it. You know, now I get it, now I understand it. And then I have other people who still need help. And so, you know, I do consultation with people. Sometimes I don't know if I'm an artistry or ideas. And I said, okay, well, why do you think you're in artistry? Why do you think you're in ideas? I said, okay, so now what do you think? And that took 3 minutes. So sometimes it's just like that. So you should definitely be able to do the work of Appendix A and Appendix B. So Appendix A is being able to recognize, and Appendix A is on page 499. which is on 509, is a self-evaluation to understand what is your nature. So even after this, if you're still not sure, then you can go to this class day before yesterday with the prosperity types, having someone help you with that exercise. This manifests because your nature cannot be repressed. So how did your values manifest as you were growing up? And maybe how they manifested in a way that was troublesome because you didn't know the Dharma. And we give, I gave some self-introspection with knowledge and perhaps guidance of other people.
In relation to someone in an artistry mentioned sensualizing knowledge.
That can be one of the possible problems.
So I was wondering, is an example of that maybe like atheism or hedonism, because
Yes,
there's no
job. They're supposed to give us, wonderfully cooked meals and attractive furniture and landscape gardens. It's not that everyone with the mentality of artistry who goes and ideas will do that, but that's one possible effect. That they'll centralize ideas. Or, religions that are all about free love or whatever.
That formulation is not working. Does that imply that concept of communism failed because of that reason?
Definitely, that was one of the reasons, yes. They had this mentality that, anyone in the field of resources is greedy. Everyone in the field of ideas is useless. Everyone in the field of government is power hungry. Oh. Yes.
What would it mean if someone's values and attractions towards one, like what they're good at, or they naturally do?
What do you mean naturally do?
I mean, like, into
If you're a heart muscle that migrated to the lung, you got to get back to the heart. Most of us are getting information and skills of things that are not in line with our values. Which is why Krishna says it twice. Don't do someone else's work, even if apparently it's serious instruction. Don't do someone else's work, even if you can do it perfectly. And even if your own work is imperfect. Like, what's wrong with you? Come on, Krishna, do you have any common sense? Why shouldn't I do some work that I can do perfectly? Doesn't it just seems like, right? Well, in terms of the skills. Like, for example, if I do government type work, I can do a lot of those skills very well. But I'm not a pleasant person to be around when I'm doing that. I don't, because the whole time I'm thinking, why am I doing this? What's wrong with the leaders? Where are they? Why aren't they taking care of this? Why do I have to do it? Right? I'm easily irritated and annoying. But on the external level, yeah. I can make sure that everybody has food and water and furniture. It's supposed to be administering buildings and facilities. And when I do it, I can do it. But again, I don't like being. It's supposed to be like that. Someone running the gift shop. The gift shop is in an open building. Things don't even always have prices on them. When I'd be walking through there and someone comes up to me and says, how do I pay for this? I said, tell me, how much should I pay? I don't know. What do you think it's worth? Whoever set it up is not resources. I know I feel good, but it sure isn't useful. But it's ridiculous. It's hard to know what you're good at because, you went there yesterday, right? So I didn't know I was good at teaching because people criticized me for teaching while I was growing up. So I had no idea I was a good teacher. I thought it was a problem. I thought teaching people was a problem. I had to stop it. I got trained in it, but I knew that I was good at it. And people are always telling you you're bossy. You might not know you're a natural leader. You might just think you have to stop being bossy. Nobody trained you in leadership. People, you know, her parents were both business people and she was trained in business her whole life and she was really good at it. And when she got to be 20, she's like, I want to be a lawyer. So you can be trained in the wrong way or you cannot be trained in the. Does that make sense? When we say what you do naturally, we're talking about what values you do naturally. Are you naturally working on serving people and big wealth? And trying to make society prosperous? Are you naturally working for justice and morals and fairness and ethics? Are you working for truth and wisdom? What are you doing naturally? What is just pushing you in any circumstance, wherever you do, or they don't pay you, and whether they punish you for it, or whether they reward you for it, because you can't be impressed, and you're just doing it. And maybe you're doing it badly and you're annoying people. Stop trying to teach people. Okay? Okay. Thank you very much. Which is how to be Krishna conscious from your sitting, from your turning on the phone, from your looking at the sun, from your breathing, from the birds, from the trees.
Indeed.